So welcome to this week's class with Hannah at Tula Being Online Yoga Studio. We are going to be flowing through a slow flow practice today. And I'm really theming things around the idea of a beginner's mind. And perhaps you might like to think about children and quite young children, sort of 4 or 5-year-olds perhaps. And if we think about that age range, they're incredibly inquisitive. They question everything, very curious at that age, very trusting at that age, sort of really just marveling at the world and new experiences. So this is sort of what I'd like us to sort of try to bring in a little bit to our practice today, even though we might have done these moves many times before. Is there any way that we could be just a little more curious, rather than just being familiar within and knowing what we're doing? How does it feel today? How does it feel different today? Let's begin by starting in child's pose. If you're not a fan of child's pose, of course, you're welcome to start somewhere else. If you'd like to use any extra padding, you might bring a towel under the knees or wedge something behind the back of those hips or thighs. But just starting to ease your way in. I've chosen wide-kneed child's pose and then reaching the arms out in front. You might choose a different variation, knees closer together. Perhaps the arms relax beside the legs with the fingers reaching to the back of the mat. Some of you might even choose to place something like a little bit of padding underneath the forehead. So because I have my knees quite wide, I've got lots of room for the belly to expand as I inhale. So maybe you can notice this expansion here as you inhale. And then if it feels good, you might choose to exhale out through the mouth for a few rounds. Maybe you notice as you continue to breathe in this way, how each breath feels subtly different to the last one. Just like each grain of sand may look exactly the same from a distance, but if we were to put a piece of sand underneath the microscope, you would be marveling at the differences. The texture, the color, the shape of each grain of sand. Just like the subtleties and differences of our breath. And this breath. And this breath. And then when you might feel ready, we'll start to lift ourselves up, coming through to tabletop here. And just feeling in, noticing maybe the pressure on the wrists, the spreading out sensation of the fingers. And maybe you'd like to keep the toes tucked or untucked. And perhaps you'd like to rock a little bit back and forth here. So I'm exhaling, pushing the hips back, and then coming through a scared cat through to cow pose, lowering the belly, lifting the heart. And then again, rounding a little bit as I drop the hips back towards the heels. And then keeping the spine curved as I come up and then through to your cow, lowering the belly, lifting the heart. And don't worry about keeping yourself through this exact momentum. It might be that you're choosing a slightly different breath connection. Maybe you're choosing a different momentum of movement, a different sway. I'm going to rock back one more time into the heels. Trying to breathe naturally with each movement and not overthinking the breath. And then come to meet in your tabletop. From here, how would it feel to loop your right arm underneath the left? And perhaps if you've got the room, you'll snuggle the right shoulder towards the earth. I like to bring my left hand a little bit wider away from my face. Press lightly into the left hand if you're up for it as you lift the left shoulder a little higher. It may be that it's a bit tricky to land your face, the side of the face to the earth and the right shoulder. So for some of us, planting a cushion underneath the side of the face and the shoulder might just give you that little extra lift. Or perhaps you're just bringing the hips further back, a little bit like a child's pose variation. And just one more breath, maybe easing the left shoulder a little more open if it's available. And then bring the left hand in closer. If you did widen it, press down and come back through to your tabletop. If it feels good to sort of sway things out a bit again, you might go through a cat-cow or a little side sway, just feeling into the side waist, into the wrists, the hips, the shoulders. So we'll aim to go for the same pose on the other side for our sort of twisted puppy pose. Left arm underneath the right this time, maybe turning that left palm up. Maybe you've got a pillow underneath the left side of the face and the shoulder. I'm going to bring my right hand a little further away from my face onto the earth. Press lightly down if you're feeling keen to see if that right shoulder might lift a little higher. And remember, you could be a little more shuffled back. Perhaps hips closer towards the heels will give you a bit more room to maneuver. And just this breath, reminding ourselves of flowing breath so that we can support ourselves through our practice today. And then slowly bringing the right hand back a little closer to the face. If you moved it, press down and come on back to tabletop. Again, you might do a little sway, a little wiggle, a little movement just to explore. How does it feel on this day that you are practicing in this moment in your body? So we'll come through to downward facing dog when you're ready. I usually will walk my hands a little further forwards from tabletop and then begin to tuck the toes, lift the hips. And you might explore by pedaling a couple of times. Maybe the shoulders will sway a little bit. And then when you feel good and ready, how about we lift the right leg to the sky and then place the right foot. I'm just going to come away from my, my plant there. Place the right foot in between those hands. So we'll pause in a low lunge here. When you feel good and ready, maybe lowering the back knee to the earth. I'm going to choose to untuck the toes. If you need a little extra padding, you could double up the mat on that side. On the left side, we'll stay on the knee for a little bit of time here. Just pausing for a moment longer. If you can, as you exhale, imagine that your hips could drop a little bit deeper to the earth. From here, we're going to actually pivot on that left knee. So it's like a kickstand. Turn the left foot towards the right side as you bring your hands to the inside of the right foot and then continue to walk the hands towards the back of the mat. I'm going to plant left hand to the back edge of the mat with the fingers pointing to the back edge of the mat. And then maybe you'd like to sweep the right arm overhead, perhaps reach the right fingers towards the back edge of the mat. You do what you want to with the right toes. You might flex the foot, lifting the foot off the ground or the toes off the ground. Maybe you end up placing the toes back to the earth. Some of you might choose to turn this a little more into a heart opener. I'm going to take hold of the back of the head lightly with the right hand. And then maybe that right shoulder could peel back a little bit more. If you feel like you can, a little light squeeze of the glutes as you attempt to push the hips a little forwards. So remembering that these are just possibilities that we might explore in our body. It might not look identical to me. It might not be that you work through every possibility there. And one more breath. And then we'll start to turn the right shoulder back down towards the ground. Right hand lowers. Sweep the hands and you might walk them along towards the front edge. Bend your right knee, and it's a bit like we're heading into a warrior two or a side plank here, side angle, I should say. Right hand stays to the earth. If you happen to have a block, you might place the block to the inside of that right foot. So right hand to the earth, left hand reaches up and over. So it becomes like a kneeling side angle. Left toes may be untucked, maybe they are tucked. And you choose where you might take your gaze. Perhaps it's looking down, maybe it's turning it to the side or up. Now I'm attempting to wedge my right arm to the inside of my right knee, and there's a slight sort of pushing back action. So we feel into inner thigh on that right leg. And then when you feel ready, looking down, bring the block out of the way if it is there. I'm just going to pivot now, left toes to the back edge of the mat. I feel like I might be a little too far forwards my right foot, so I'm going to drag it back. If you have the mat doubled up, you'll want to undouble it on the left side as we hover the left knee up off the earth. And maybe you'll choose to do a little rock. We're going to end up standing in a forward fold at the top of the mat, so perhaps a hop up, a couple of hops with the left foot, until you find your way tumbling forwards into your ragdoll. Here you might like to sway a little bit. Maybe you'll choose a different arm shape. It could be bringing the hands behind the back of the head, maybe interlacing fingers or taking hold of the elbows behind you. Maybe interlacing fingers by the hips and then letting the hands topple overhead. Or just letting the fingers dangle towards the ground. I'm choosing to sway a little bit here, side to side or back and forth. Finally, maybe there's a little nod, a yes or a no through the head, just feeling into the back of the neck. Maybe it feels good to just take an expressive sigh. Releasing the hands towards the earth when you're ready. We'll slowly begin to unravel all the way up with a little shrug of the shoulders once we come to stand. Just coming to pause. Maybe eyes are closed. Maybe the eyes are just focused onto something that doesn't move a whole lot. New beginnings can be a beautiful opportunity for a clean slate, but new beginnings can also be a place where we hold a little anxiety, a little worry around. So if we could bring a little playfulness, a little easygoing childlikeness to the idea and notion of a new beginning, how would that look in our yoga practice? Perhaps it's being a little more easygoing with the way that we think we should perform. Perhaps it's trying something today that you've never tried before. And then perhaps it's just having a little laugh and a giggle at yourself if you end up falling over or feeling really wobbly. Or if perhaps you just realize, okay, I need to pause now. And maybe you sink into a child's pose or a downward dog, and we'll just meet you there at some point. Let's rinse things out with a deep inhale through the nose, a sigh away. Palms together at heart space when you're ready. The hands rise up. Inhale, easygoing flow. Hands towards the earth, forward fold. Inhale to halfway lift. Let's step back to downward facing dog. And if you want to, you'll pause and you'll hang out there. Otherwise, perhaps you'd like to ripple forwards through to high plank pose. Maybe you're able to pause in your high plank. Now you could drop the knees to the earth at this stage already. I'm going to bring my right foot a little more to center and then see if I can lift my left foot. So this might be where things get a little bit silly. Could you bring the weight into your left hand and maybe just start to come onto the right fingertips? If you feel like you could, right fingers move further forwards. If you feel like you can, hover that right hand and then whoop, lower it and lower the foot. If you want to, knees to the earth, little cat-cow or downward facing dog. And then we're gonna come back into plank pose. So you could try this with the knees to the ground and you'll just work with one knee to the earth instead of the foot. I'm gonna bring my left foot a little more to center, and then I'm gonna try to hover the right foot. Can you avoid lifting your bum high so it doesn't become a downward dog? You're still in a plank. Shift the weight into your right hand. Maybe you just hover the palm of the left hand there. Maybe you creepy crawl left fingers further forwards if you can. Could you hover left hand? Maybe it's just a moment. And then lower the hand. Great job. Lower the foot. If you want, drop the knees, cat-cow or downward facing. Well done. Coming to meet in downward facing dog. From downward dog, this time it'll be the left leg that rises. Inhale, sweep the leg up, and then place left foot in between the hands. So we're dropping the back knee to the earth. Maybe you double up the mat again on that right side. I'm just letting everything sink down here for another breath or two. Feeling into those hips, noticing any feedback that you might be experiencing from the body. And then we want to pivot on the right knee. So I'm going to actually bring the right foot to the left side, sweeping the hands towards the back of the mat. The right hand plants down under the shoulder. Right fingers turn to the back edge of the mat. Left hand might rise up or reach overhead to the back edge. And you do what you want to do with that left foot. So maybe the toes are down on the earth, reaching forwards. Maybe you peel the left toes up. You might choose to turn this a little more into a heart opener. I like to take hold of the back of the head. You might not do that. Just cactus plant the elbow if you'd like. And then perhaps for some of us, we're able to pivot the heart up towards the ceiling. Maybe there's a light push of the hips forwards. A little engagement of the core as always, so that we're supporting our spine, our neck, our shoulders, our core. And then you want to sweep the hands again towards the front edge of the mat. So pivot left shoulder down. I'm just going to push my hips back as I do that. And then walk the hands forwards. You're bending the left leg. Maybe again you grab that little support, your block or book, whatever you've got there if you need it. Planting the left hand to the inside of the left foot. Maybe the right hand reaches towards the ceiling or overhead and forward. So it's a bit like a kneeling side angle stretch here. And there is a aim to sort of wedge your left arm to the inside of the left knee and a slight sort of pulling back action. So you feel inner left thigh opening. Choose where you might like to turn the gaze. And then again, looking down towards the top edge of the mat, I'm just going to bring that prop out of the way. Hands either side of the left foot, pivoting right toes towards the back edge of the mat. We prepare for a lunge, so we hover the back knee off the earth, and then you'll end up stepping to the top edge of the mat. So there might be a little rock to step. Take a halfway lift this time. Inhale, and gently bow. Exhale. Rolling up or sweeping up, your choice. We come to pause, we come to stand. Again, let's just take this opportunity to feel into the earth, to bring ourselves into this moment. Maybe the eyes are open, maybe they're closed. Let's go ahead and we'll take a vinyasa here, a full flow. Hands to heart, the hands will rise. Inhale. Exhale to the earth, forward fold. Halfway lift the spine. Your choice how you end up there. I'm going to take a high to low plank. You might hop, you might step. Maybe you choose knees to the earth. Chaturanga maybe halfway. Through to a cobra or upward facing. It could have been a cat-cow, but let's come and meet in downward facing dog. Pausing, finding your breath. And of course, finding the earth. Let's lift the right leg to the sky. Inhale. And then place the right foot in between the hands. This time a high lunge. So we reach the hands to the sky, crescent lunge. And then if you feel like you might want to do that, you're going to bend the elbows and sort of take hold of the outer edge of the elbows here. So eyes focus sort of down maybe a couple of meters in front of you. It could be a little bit higher, but try to focus your gaze onto something that doesn't move. It'll help with your balance here. Spread the weight across your right foot will also help, and keep a little bend maybe through both knees. How would it feel if you started to sway your shoulders and your elbows to the right side as you exhale? And then inhale back up to center. How would it feel if you did the same but the other way? Exhale to the left side. You'll notice that you have to counteract the balance through your legs as you do this. And we're doing it so slowly. So slow down the breath. Exhaling whenever you're ready, swaying to the right side. And then inhaling to center. Exhale to the left side. Inhale to center. Go ahead and reach the arms back up to the ceiling and then open out to warrior two pose. Settle in, get your feet where you want them to be, so it's right toes straight forwards on your mat. Your right knee roughly hovers on top of that right heel. If you can imagine, if you had a mirror, you want to think about your shoulders landing roughly on top of your hip bones here, so you're not kind of leaning forwards. That's a different pose. Warrior two, we've got shoulders roughly on top of those hips. We will end up in our side angle like we were kneeling. Now we're going to be in our upright one. Start to lean forwards, and perhaps you'd like to balance your right elbow on top of that right thigh. Left arm could reach up and over. Now for years and years, I used to think, oh, you must never lift your left shoulder. And I used to decompress away. But actually, there is an elevation that's needed. I'm not trying to bring my shoulder into my ear, but I am actually trying to create more space through that left side of the ribs. So think about a little cinch up with the left side of the ribs, also the right side of the ribs. You aren't touching your shoulder to the ear, but you are elevating the left shoulder. That is perfectly allowed. It's funny how we learn different methods over years, and finally that sort of trickled into my understanding of this pose. And then when you're ready, looking down towards the earth, let's bring the hands down and we'll step back. So it could be a little flow time, a little opportunity to flow however you would like to. And that might be through a child's pose, there meeting in downward dog. But just giving you a couple more breaths to meet in that downward facing. So coming to meet in downward dog, if you're not already there, this time it'll be your left leg that rises as you inhale. And then place left foot in between the hands. So into your high crescent lunge, reach the hands, sweep them. So again, we'll take hold of the elbows. There'll probably be a way that you automatically cross one arm in front of the other. Can you now cross the other arm in front of the other? Now before I was saying exhale, drop down. I'd like you to experiment with inhaling to drop to the left side. So we're swapping the breath over this time. And just seeing how that might affect things, how it could make things feel harder or easier. But just see, maybe you feel like a more expansiveness as you inhale, drop to the left. And then exhale to center. And then the other way, inhale. If you're struggling with the arms overhead, by the way, I'm so sorry, I should have mentioned, you can have hands at heart or to the waist. It's totally fine. And then upright, exhale. Again, it'll be an inhale to your left, expanding through the right side. Don't worry about being in time with me. It's just to either side. And then an inhale, expanding through the left side body. And then exhale to center. Reach the arms on up, inhale. And then to a warrior two, exhale. So again, As it's a slow flow, you've got plenty of time to really feel into the position that you'd like to land into. If you ever find that you just need to rest the arms, you could always just relax them down, or hands at heart or the hips if you need to. Again, if you can you imagine that you have your shoulders roughly balanced on top of your hips here? Maybe you could imagine that your palms, if you have the arms outstretched, that they are roughly on top of your feet. So we'll inhale, lean your body forwards, balancing left elbow, left thigh, and then the right arm reaches overhead there. Anyone that's having a little bit of issues with shoulders, bring hand to heart instead, or to the hip. Could you draw the right shoulder up and forwards without it touching the ear, and then little cinch up through the right side of the ribs and a little cinch up of the left side of the ribs. So we really start to feel into the side body on that right side. This is where we're feeling the action. One more breath. And then we'll gently land the hands down towards the earth. Perhaps you'd like to flow again, whatever way you would like to, until we meet once again in downward dog. And you've got a good few breaths to rush. When you're ready, downward facing dog. From your downward dog, lift the right leg to the sky. Inhale. Place that right foot in between the hands. Into that high crescent lunge, the hands sweep. Inhale. Maybe you could again cross the arms one in front of the other, take hold of the elbows. Try to notice if you do arch. Could you attempt to not arch the spine? So I didn't mention any of this before. Sometimes I give too much information, so I'm trying to drip feed little bits, little pockets of information here. So we'll be doing the same thing, and we'll be tilting down to the side, but try to avoid kind of dropping the bum back, the belly forwards, and sort of collapsing through the lower back. So there's a little resistance, lower ribs hugging in. So maybe you'll play with that breath. I'm going to try a little exhale down again on this side and just sort of see what happens. And then inhale upright. And then an exhale down. Don't worry which side you started. Inhale to lift and exhale, lowering. There's two on either side. A lift and a lower. And a lift. Reach the arms up. Come through to warrior two pose again. If you need to relax the arms, you can. Just doing what you need to. You're going to straighten through the legs and then pivot right toes towards the left side. Bring your hands to your hips. Now, you might need to change the width of your feet. Try not to be really wide. This really depends on the length of our legs in terms of how wide. Oh, and also the length of your torso. So I've got my feet a good meter apart, give or take, all right? Very much depends a little bit on the length of our limbs and our spine. So we'll keep the hands to the hips. We are going to aim for a forward fold, but if you need to, you might end up bending the knees, okay? Now, if you happen to have one or a couple of blocks, maybe you'll have it at the ready because you'll know that you need to just bring a little bit of an arm extender in. So feel free to grab your prop. I'm going to think about rolling shoulders back and a little heart lift, inhale. And then start to bow forwards, hinging at those hips. We could release our hands maybe on top of a block or two. If you feel like you can reach the earth relatively easily, go ahead and do so, but do check in with your spine. So we want to try to avoid rounding the back. Could you look straight down where your hands are and lengthen through the neck and lengthen through your thoracic and lumbar, so the spine is pretty long rather than rounded. And that might be just adding a little bend into the knees or something underneath the hands there. If you feel like you have got some more room, You might think about walking the hands further back. I want to bring the weight into the toes, so you're not leaning your weight into the heels, you are leaning your weight into your toes. The heels don't lift, it's just this gripping sensation of the feet, the toes to the ground. Maybe you're able to pause for 2 more breaths, just wherever you can be. And I think about drawing the lower ribs in as I exhale. Maybe you'll notice you get a little more length in that spine. And then start to walk the hands forwards again. And we're going to start to pivot the right toes to the front edge of the mat, bend through the right knee, and start to walk your hands to the inside of that right foot. Pivot the back heel up. You're into a low lizard lunge. So I'm just going to walk my right foot wider. So I've just brought it to just roughly to the inside of the right edge of your mat. And then perhaps you're comfy again, dropping the back knee. You could keep it lifted for longer if you want to. And we're just going to pause here for a little bit longer in our lizard lunge. We have a couple of choices here. It could be that you're happy enough keeping your hands to the ground. Maybe you bring blocks underneath your hands, lift up a little higher, or a cushion or something. It could be that you have a little more space to drop down onto the forearms, and that could be on top of blocks again. And then finally, if you wanted to, you could turn this into a twist. So I'm going to wing my right foot even wider. Bringing the right foot off the mat feels comfortable for me. It may not for you. And then turning the right toes out. I want to push my right knee a little bit wider. And then with your right hand, maybe you could just bring that to the inside of the right foot, and then your right shoulder might begin to lift. You do not have to be into this final part here. You might be looking to the ground. Maybe you've got hands on top of blocks. Perhaps you're in a completely different shape, and maybe you're much more upright and placing blocks underneath your hands today. For the final part of this pose, if you do have the added twist and you know that your quad might feel happy to do so in the left knee, you could start to bend that left leg. Perhaps you reach back. Maybe you just touch the foot. One more breath. And then slowly bring that right foot back through to center. Hands towards the earth. Tuck the back toes, hover the knee. We're actually going to step up to the top edge of the mat. So a little rock to step forwards. And just letting yourself bow here. We'll begin to slowly unravel and come through to stand. And just feel into the differences that you might be experiencing between left and right side there. Perhaps you'd like a little sort of sway. Before we move on to the other side, let's bring a little tree pose into our practice here. So bring the weight into your right foot, spread the toes out, and it's left foot to inner right leg. Now it may be that that's very tricky to bring it to the inner thigh. Perhaps we're struggling with that one today. Don't worry too much about it being on the knee. You just want to be careful not to push really fiercely on the knee joint. Could be a bit lower. And finally, you could also have the toes to the ground. You could even hold onto a wall perhaps, if you're near to one. If you're feeling quite comfy with your balance, maybe you start to reach the arms up. And then I'm going to actually lower my left hand so that the left palm is facing up and the back of the hand rests on the left knee or thigh. Now, only if it's feeling comfortable, I'm going to think about a little sway. So I actually sort of turn my torso into a letter C shape almost. I'm going to start to see if I can start to reach over. And this is where you might be falling out. Have a good laugh and a giggle at yourself. It's only yoga. It's only a balance pose. If we can be a little more playful with things, maybe we can pick ourselves back up and try again a little easier. That 4 or 5-year-old that tries and tries again without fear. And then when you're ready, we slowly lift ourselves back up through neutral and just relax the legs back down. You might want to wiggle that out a bit. We're going to end up in a downward dog. You choose how you'd like to get there. For me, I'm going to sweep up as I inhale. And then exhale, bow. Halfway lifting. Your choice how you flow. And then meeting in downward facing. So from downward facing dog, it'll be the left leg that rises. Place left foot in between the hands. Hands begin to rise. Take hold of the elbows. Different arm crosses in front of the other. Okay, so this time it'll be the inhales that we do to go side to side. It's 2 sways either side, just whenever you're ready. And remember, try to avoid a big sort of heart opening shape. We're seeing if we can keep lower ribs in. If you're finding the arms overhead too much, just have your hands at the heart, or you could relax the arms beside you. So we inhale, sway it down to one side and expand through the other. Exhale to neutral. We inhale, go the other way, whatever arms kind of works for you at this stage. Exhale. Don't worry about changing things up for this round in terms of the arm shape. And to the center. Whoop. And last time, inhale. And to center. Well done. From here, the arms rise, and then we land to our warrior 2 pose. Settle in for another breath. And then start to straighten the legs. Pivot left toes towards the right, and then take your time. Get yourself set up where you might want to have those feet again. Into that straddle forward fold. So this time, you could bring the hands back down to the ground like you did before, or perhaps you might choose a different arm shape. Perhaps you'll interlace the fingers behind you. Maybe you'll keep your hands on your hips the whole time. I'm going to start with the hands to the hips, inhaling, lifting the heart. And then as you bow, think about hinging at the hips. So maybe now you don't need the blocks on this side because I'm not going to touch the ground. So perhaps you'll take hold of the elbows behind your lower back. Maybe interlace the fingers if that feels comfy enough. And you're trying to bring the weight into your toes. So I'm teetering the weight forwards. The toes are gripping the ground there. And you're just seeing if you can find a little length in the spine. You could always add a little bend into those knees. And just being curious of the feedback in your body, whether this side feels sweeter or less sweeter. I'm feeling less sweeter, I have to admit. Oh, that's all right. I've got a different arm shape going on. There's a lot of feedback from me today. It's just where we're at on this particular day that we're practicing. So if you do have the hands overhead like me, you might want to just bring them to the hips first, then release the interlace. And then pivot those left toes to the front. And then we're into our low lizard lunge. So I'm going to drop my back knee, widen the left foot. And again, you've got choices here. So maybe you stay on the palms. Maybe you feel like you could lower down to the forearms. I'm going through this slightly quicker, so less talking from me in a moment. You will be pausing where you feel like you want to linger. Perhaps you've got something underneath the hands or the forearms. So if you happen to have 2 blocks, great. You could possibly just turn your block on medium height, bring yourself onto forearms. That might be enough. Maybe you've got a pillow on top of that. If you feel like you want to add the twist into it, I'm going to widen my left foot even more. If that's available, you could do that. And then the left hand to the inside of the left thigh, perhaps, encouraging left shoulder to open. And the final part, if you feel like your right knee is feeling comfortable enough to go there and the quad, you could start to bend the back leg. Maybe you just reach back, tap the foot. We're not here for long, so I'm not going to grab the foot. And then just slowly let go, release. So heel and toe the left foot in closer again. We tuck the back toes, hover the knee, hands either side of that left foot. Little rock, step it up. and waterfall, cascading your body into that forward fold. And we sweep our way up to the sky. Inhale. And hands to heart. So we have our tree pose onto the left foot this time. A little bit of a balance again. So you could always come off your mat if you're feeling too unstable. It could be too squidgy. Maybe use a wall. Spread the toes out on that left foot, and then the right foot is going into place. Remembering that you could have the foot right down to the ground today. Take your time getting yourself balanced. So it may be that you never change the arms, maybe hands stay at heart the whole time. There is a light squeeze of the glutes to widen that right knee. And then finally, you might place right palm on the back of the hand on top of that knee or thigh. The other arm reaches, and then it's like you're turning yourself kind of into a big letter C shape. This could be where you end up falling over. And if your eyes are wandering around and you're trying to look at the screen there, you're probably going to fall over. Keep your gaze onto something solid that doesn't move. This will help. Maybe looking down will help. Don't worry if you've toppled over. Perhaps you've come to rejoin. And then slowly come back up. Whoop. And feet to the ground. A little wiggle out. Well done. When you feel ready, the hands rise. It is our last flow. Exhale to the earth. You might choose just to step back to downward dog. Maybe you want to take your high to low plank, just moving freely. Once you find your way to downward facing dog, we'll go ahead and drop the knees. And we are going to end up coming onto our backs. So slowly maneuvering your way onto your spine. Shimmying yourself to the center of your mat and acknowledging that you have landed. Maybe another expressive breath out through the mouth once you're there. Perhaps you notice a little bit of energy circulating, or perhaps you notice a little bit of energy settling. You're just resting in whatever shape feels natural and easy in this moment. So it might be that you'd like to simply snuggle into Savasana at this stage. Otherwise, I'm just going to invite you to finish off with a little gentle spinal twist either side. You might like to walk the feet wider than your mat, let the knees drop down to one side. Perhaps you'd like a little windscreen wipe of the legs. Or perhaps you'd like to shimmy the hips a little further one way and then drop the knees the opposite direction to where you scooted the hips. And then you land for a few breaths. I've gone ahead and just balanced one knee on top of the other, but you might end up stagging or splitting the legs somehow, or binding. For me, I'm attempting to widen through the back of the shoulders, so spreading the arms so that the heart peels open and the shoulder blades attempt to snuggle into the earth. Being curious in this moment as to what may be there beneath the surface. With a sense of playful curiosity, we explore. And then gently drawing your way back through to center, if you're still there. And then you'll swap it over to the other side if you've been pausing somewhere. A similar shape, but it doesn't have to be identical. Here is no doubt a very familiar part of your practice. Is there anything new in this moment? Nothing has to be profound. Perhaps it's just a slightly longer exhale today. Maybe you feel resistance here in your body more than normal. And it's all part of the discovery of today's practice. And then slowly coming back up through center. It is time for us to think about settling into our very final pose, Savasana time. So you want to get yourself nice and comfy, set up either just laying flat on your back, or perhaps you're snuggling some pillows underneath the back of the knees. Arms could be spread out with the palms facing up, or perhaps you have rested the palms upon the body somehow. If it feels right for you to exhale a little bit deeper, go ahead and do so for a couple of rounds. And maybe you're comfortable closing down the eyes. Here we settle into our final pose of deep, deep nourishing rest. And so very slowly we start to become more aware of our surroundings. We start to become more aware again of our body upon the earth. And then start to notice slightly longer, fuller inhales and exhales again. And finally, we start to add a little bit of movement. Maybe a deep stretch. Until you feel ready to roll onto your side, we ultimately gather our way back up through to a seated posture where we collectively land to seal our practice. A moment of acknowledgement that you physically brought yourself into this space, and we also attempted to bring our mind along with that physical journey today. New beginnings can sometimes be intimidating, but new beginnings can also be a wonderful way through to new and exciting prospects too. So thank you so much for joining, and perhaps you'd like to join in an acknowledging bow. I bow to you.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like it below, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon. Not only will this keep you up to date with my offerings, but will keep content like To The Being free and accessible to all.